In a small community tucked within the bustling city of Lagos lived a couple named Adewale and Aisha. Like many others, they longed for the fulfillment of their union with the laughter of children running around the house. However, their prayers were yet to be answered for many years. The couple tried everything: doctors, prayers at various churches, herbalists, and even shrines, yet the heavens remained silent. After 7 long years of waiting, when their hope had begun to fade like the setting sun over the Lagos lagoon, Aisha discovered she was pregnant. The joy that filled their home was unmatched. The news spread quickly through the community, and the couple received an outpouring of support. Everyone anticipated the birth of the miracle child who will bring joy and prosperity to their family. However, the couple's joy was doubled when Aisha gave birth to two beautiful twin boys. The first, named Ayomide, meaning my joy has come, while the second, Ayodele, meaning joy has come home. The birth of the twins was seen as a divine blessing, a testimony of endurance and faith. Every day, life became a celebration for Adewale and Aisha. Their home, once filled with silent prayers and hushed conversations, was now alive with the cries and laughter of the twins. Friends and family came from far and wide to see the miracle babies, bringing gifts and blessings. Aisha and Adewale could not have been happier. The boys were their pride and joy. However, as the twins grew, strange things began to happen. The boys will often stare off into the distance, their eyes following something unseen by others. They spoke in hushed tones to what seemed to be an invisible friend, and at night they would have vivid dreams that left them screaming in terror. Aisha was the first to notice these peculiar behaviors. Concerned, she spoke to Adewale, who dismissed her worries, attributing them to playful nature of the boys. They are just imaginations, he would say, laughing it off. But Aisha was not convinced. She felt a deep unease, a mother's instinct warning her of something she couldn't quite understand. Then, one fateful evening, as they were preparing for bed, Ayomide fondly called Mide and Ayodele fondly called Dele, suddenly began to cry inconsolably. Their cries pierced the night, sending chills down Aisha's spine. She rushed to their room and found them both pointing to the window, tears streaming down their faces. The shadow is calling us, Dele whispered, his voice trembling with fear. Aisha looked out at the window but saw nothing unusual. Yet a cold shiver ran down her spine. She held the boys close, trying to comfort them. But their cries only grew louder. Adewale, Aisha's husband, hearing the commotion, hurried to the room. He looked out at the window and saw nothing. "It's just a nightmare," he assured them, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. But the twins were adamant. "It was real, Dad," Mide insisted, his tiny hands clutching his mother's gown. "The shadow said it is coming for us." The following day, Aisha sought the advice of the village elder, Baba Agba, a man known for his wisdom and connection to the spirit realm. Baba Agba listened carefully as Aisha recounted the events of the night. His face grew serious, his eyes narrowing with concern. "There's a spirit in your home," he said finally, his voice deep and foreboding. "A spirit drawn to the twins. It is not a good spirit. It seeks to take them away." Aisha felt her heart drop. "Ah, Baba, what can we do?" she asked, fear gripping her voice. "You must protect them," Baba Agba replied. "There are rituals, prayers, and offerings that must be made. The spirit must be appeased or driven away. But it will not be easy. Such spirits are persistent, especially when they have found what they seek." With a heavy heart, Aisha returned home, her mind racing with thoughts of what Baba Agba had said. She knew she had to protect her boys at all costs, but she also knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. As she looked at Mide and Dele playing innocently in their room, she could not shake off the feeling of dread that had settled over her heart. The twins were her world, and she was willing to do anything to keep them safe. Little did she know that the trials that lay ahead would test not only her faith, but the very bond that she shared with her beloved sons. The days that followed were marked by a heavy, unsettling silence in the home of Adewale and Aisha. Adewale, still doubtful about the supernatural explanations, tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. He could play with the twins, telling them stories of brave hunters and heroic warriors who faced dangers and triumphed. But even in his stories, a shadow seemed to loom, a shadow that the twins recognized and feared. One afternoon, as their father was telling another one of his tales, Dele interrupted. "Dad," he said softly, "are shadows evil?" Adewale paused, taken aback by the question. "No, my son," he replied, trying to sound confident. "Shadows are just shadows. They cannot harm you." "But this one can," Mide whispered, his voice so low it was almost inaudible. Aisha, standing at the doorway, heard him. Her heart sank further. She knew she had to act. The thought of losing the boys to some malevolent force was unbearable. That evening, Aisha made her way back to Baba Agba's compound. She had barely slept since their last conversation, her mind consumed by the thought of the spirits and the threat it posed to her children. Baba Agba greeted her with the same calm demeanor, but his eyes showed that he knew why she had come. "Have the twins spoken of the spirit again?" he asked, as he ushered her into his hut. "Yes, Baba," Aisha replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are terrified. I need to know how to protect them. What must I do, Baba?" Baba Agba nodded and began to gather herbs and items from his shelves. "We must perform a cleansing ritual," he said. "This will not banish the spirit entirely, but it will make your home less inviting to it. It will make it harder for the spirit to reach the boys." He handed Aisha a bundle of herbs and a small bottle filled with a thick, dark liquid. "You must burn these herbs every night for the next 7 days," he instructed, "and sprinkle this oil around the windows and doors. The spirit feeds on fear and uncertainty. You must remain strong for the boys' sake. They will look to you for strength." Aisha nodded, determination setting in her heart. She took the items and thanked Baba Agba, promising to follow his instructions carefully. Back at home, she explained the ritual to her husband. He was reluctant at first, still not fully believing in the supernatural, but seeing the fear in Aisha's eyes, he agreed. "If this will ease your mind, then we shall do it," he said, his tone gentle. That night, they began the ritual. Aisha lit the herbs, their fragrance and smoke filling the small house, creating a soothing atmosphere. She whispered prayers under her breath, asking the gods to protect her children. Mide and Dele watched with wide eyes, their small hands clutching each other. Aisha could see the fear in their eyes, but also a glimmer of hope. They trusted her, and she had to believe that this will work. For the first time in days, the twins slept peacefully. Aisha and Adewale took turns keeping watch and not daring to leave the boys alone. As the first light of dawn broke, a sense of relief washed over them. Perhaps, just perhaps, the spirit had been deterred. However, their relief was short-lived. On the third night of the ritual, as Aisha sprinkled the oil around the windows, she heard a faint whisper, soft, almost like a breeze, but unmistakable. It sent a chill down her spine. She turned to see Mide standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with fear. "Mom," he whispered, "it's here. It's outside." Aisha's heart raced. She grabbed Mide and pulled him close, glancing out the window. She saw nothing but the darkness of the night. Yet the air felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. She rushed to Dele's room, finding him awake and trembling. "I heard it too, Mom," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Their father, sensing something was wrong, joined them. "What is it?" he asked, his eyes searching Aisha's for answers. "The spirit," she said, her voice shaking. "It's outside. The boys can feel it." Adewale's face grew stern. He took the oil from Aisha and began to sprinkle it around the door, muttering a prayer he barely remembered from his childhood. He felt foolish, but his family's fear was real, and he would do anything to protect them. The night dragged on, each minute feeling like eternity. The twins clung to Aisha, their eyes darting to the window, watching, waiting for anything. Their father stayed by the door, his ears straining to catch any sound. Just before dawn, a soft knock echoed through the house. It was so faint that they almost missed it. The twins were frightened, holding onto their mother tightly. Adewale approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" he called out, his voice strong despite the fear gripping his heart. There was no answer, only silence. He opened the door slowly, the creak of the hinges slicing through the quiet. Outside, the night was still, the street empty, but there, on the doorstep, lay a small bundle wrapped in a black cloth. Adewale picked it up carefully and unwrapped it, revealing a strange-looking stone, smooth and cold to the touch, with strange markings etched into it. Aisha was in shock, recognizing it immediately. "It's a charm," she whispered. "Baba Agba told me about this. They are used to bind spirits. But who would have done this? Who would have left this here?" Adewale asked, bewildered. Aisha shook her head, her mind racing with possibilities. Whoever has left that charm knew about the spirit and the twins. The mysterious charm left on the doorstep haunted Aisha's thoughts. She knew it was no ordinary object. Its purpose was clear, yet its origin remained a mystery. Who could have known about the spirit that was tormenting her sons? And more so, who could have left such a powerful artifact at her home? Unable to shake off the feeling of unease, Aisha decided to visit Baba Agba again. She left the twins with Adewale, who reluctantly agreed to perform the rituals in her absence, and made her way through the narrow, winding streets of Lagos to Baba Agba's compound. "I felt a disturbance," he said as soon as she arrived. "The spirit is restless, and it knows that you are trying to keep it away." Aisha nodded, showing him the charm. "This was left on our doorstep last night. Do you know what it is or who could have left it?" Baba Agba took the talisman and examined it closely. His eyes widened with recognition. "Oh, this is a binding stone," he said slowly. "It is used to trap spirits, to bind them to a place or person." "Who would leave such a thing at our house?" Aisha asked, fear creeping into her voice. Baba Agba sighed deeply. "Not all who know the ways of the spirit world are benevolent, Aisha. There are those who seek to use spirits for their gain, to harness their power. It is possible that someone in your community has summoned the spirit and now wishes to bind it to your sons." Aisha felt a wave of nausea wash over her. "But why? Why my sons?" "The twins are special," Baba Agba replied. "They are a gift, a connection to the spirit world. Such gifts are rare and powerful. Some might see them as tools, as a means to an end." Aisha's heart sank. "What do I do now, Baba? How do I protect them?" Baba Agba handed the talisman back to her. "You must find out who left this and why. Until you do, the spirit will continue to haunt your home. Be vigilant, Aisha. Trust no one." Aisha nodded, her resolve hardening. She thanked Baba Agba and left his compound, her mind racing with thoughts of who could be behind this. When she returned home, she found Adewale with the twins in the living room. Mida and Dele were drawing, their faces still pale but somewhat calmer. Adewale looked up, relief flooding his face when he saw her. "Did Baba Agba have any answers?" he asked. Aisha nodded and explained what she had learned. Adewale listened carefully, his face growing darker with each word. "So, someone in our community is behind this?" he asked. "It seems so," Aisha replied. "We have to be careful. We can't trust anyone." Adewale nodded. "We'll keep the boys inside and continue with the rituals. We must do everything we can to keep them safe." That night, as they continued the ritual, Aisha felt a presence in the room. It was faint, like a whisper in the wind, but it was there. She looked at the twins, who were both staring at the window again, their faces pale with fear. "It's here," Dele whispered, his voice trembling. Aisha held the talisman tightly in her hand, whispering prayers under her breath. She could feel the spirit's presence growing stronger, pushing against the boundaries she and Adewale had set. Then, suddenly, the candle flames flickered out. The room plunged into darkness and the air grew cold. Aisha could hear a low, menacing growl echoing through the room. She held the twins close, her heart pounding. "We have to stay calm," she whispered to Adewale, who was frantically trying to relight the candle. "It's trying to scare us. We can't let it." Adewale nodded, his hand shaking as he struck the match. Finally, the candle flared back to life, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The growling stopped, and the air seemed to warm again. The spirit was testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses. They had to be ready for whatever came next. The next day, Aisha decided to confront her neighbors. She needed to know if anyone had seen anything unusual. She started with Mama Titi, who lived next door. Mama Titi was an elderly woman who often sat by her window watching the streets. If anyone had seen anything, it would be her. As Aisha knocked on Mama Titi's door, she felt a strange sense of dread. The door creaked open, and Mama Titi's wrinkled face appeared. "Ah, Aisha," she said, her voice soft. "What brings you here?" Aisha forced a smile. "Hmm, I just wanted to ask if you've seen anything strange around our house lately. Any strangers or anything unusual?" Mama Titi's eyes narrowed slightly. "Strange? No, I haven't seen anything strange. Why do you ask?" Aisha hesitated. She didn't want to reveal too much. "Oh, it's nothing. Just some strange noises at night. I thought maybe someone had been around our house." Mama Titi nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Aisha's. "Well, if I see anything, I'll let you know." As Aisha turned to leave, she felt Mama Titi's gaze burning into her back. She couldn't shake the feeling that the old woman knew more than she was letting on. She continued to ask around the neighborhood, but no one had seen anything, or at least no one was willing to say. That night, as she prepared for the ritual, she noticed something strange. The charm was missing. She searched frantically, but it was nowhere to be found. Panic set in. Without the charm, their home was vulnerable. "Adewale!" she called out, her voice shaking. "The charm is gone." Adewale rushed to her side. "Are you sure? Maybe it fell somewhere." "No, I left it right here," Aisha insisted. "Someone took it." The twins watched with wide eyes as their parents searched the house, their fear palpable. Aisha could feel the spirit's presence again, stronger this time, pushing against the barriers. Just as they were about to give up, Mide spoke up. "Mom, I saw someone take it," he said softly. Aisha turned to him, her heart racing. "Who, Mide? Who took it?" "A woman," he whispered. "She came in the night and took it from the table." Aisha's mind raced. Could it have been Mama Titi or someone else? Whoever it was, they were trying to weaken our defenses to let the spirit in. As the night wore on, the spirit grew bolder. It whispered in the dark, taunting them, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. The twins clung to Aisha, their small bodies trembling with fear. Adewale stayed by the door, holding a makeshift weapon, his eyes darting around the room. Aisha could see the fear in his eyes, but also determination. They would not let the spirit take their sons. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whisper stopped. The air grew still, and a sense of calm settled over the room. Aisha knew it was only a temporary reprieve, a lull in the storm. Days turned into weeks, and the spirit's presence grew stronger. With each passing night, it was relentless, its whispers turning into screams, its shadows dancing on the walls like flames. The rituals seemed to have little effect now. The spirit was breaking through inch by inch. One night, as Aisha and Adewale were performing the ritual, a loud crash came from the twins' room. They rushed in to find the window shattered, glasses shattered across the floor. Mide and Dele were gone. Aisha screamed, her heart breaking in her chest. "Ayomide, Ayodele," she called out, running to the window, but there was no sign of them. Adewale grabbed his torch and rushed outside, searching frantically in the darkness. Aisha followed, her mind racing. The spirit had taken them. It had finally succeeded. They searched the entire neighborhood, calling out for the twins, but there was no answer. It was as if they vanished into thin air. Aisha felt a wave of despair wash over her. Her babies were gone, and she had no idea where they were or how to get them back. The neighbors began to gather, whispering amongst themselves. Some looked on with pity, others with fear. The twins were cursed, and now that curse had claimed them. But Aisha refused to give up. She went back to Baba Agba, begging him for help. Please, Baba, she cried. You have to help me find them. The spirits have taken them. I know it. Baba Agba looked at her with deep sadness in his eyes. I warned you, Aisha. This spirit is powerful. It was drawn to the twins for a reason. But there must be something we can do, Aisha pleaded. Some way to bring them back. Baba Agba nodded slowly. There is a way, but it is dangerous. You must enter the spirit world and confront the spirit yourself. You must demand the return of your sons. Aisha felt a chill run down her spine. Enter the spirit world? How? Baba Agba handed her a small pouch filled with strange powder. Mix this with water and drink it. It will take you to the spirit world. But be warned, Aisha, the spirit world is not like ours. It is a place of darkness and shadows. And once you enter, there is no guarantee you will return. Aisha nodded, her resolve firm. I have to try. I cannot leave my sons there. Adewale tried to stop her, fear gripping his heart. Aisha, please. It's too dangerous. There must be another way. But Aisha was determined. I have to do this, Adewale. I have to save our sons. That night, after preparing the mixture, Aisha drank it. She felt a strange sensation wash over her, as if she was being pulled into a deep dark ocean. The room began to spin and she felt herself falling into darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was in a strange place. Ayomide, Ayodele, she called out, her voice echoing in the emptiness. She heard a faint cry in the distance and she ran towards it. As she ran, shadows closed in around her, but she pushed on, her love for her sons giving her strength. She could see a faint light ahead, and in it, the outlines of two small figures. Ayomide, Ayodele, she cried, rushing towards them. The twins turned to her, their eyes wide with fear and relief. Mom! They called out, running into her arms. Aisha held them close, tears streaming down her face. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. But as she tried to pull them away, a dark figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and menacing. The spirit. It had come to claim them. You cannot take them, Aisha shouted, her voice filled with defiance. They are my sons, and they do not belong to you. The spirit laughed, a deep chilling sound that echoed through the darkness. They belong to me now, it hissed. They have the gift. They will serve me. Aisha felt a surge of anger. No, she said firmly. They are mine. I demand you to release them now. The spirit snarled and lunged at her, its claws outstretched. Aisha closed her eyes, bracing for the impact. Suddenly, a bright light from the heavens filled the darkness, blinding Aisha. She felt a force pulling her back, away from the spirit, away from the darkness. She held onto the twins tightly, refusing to let go. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her home, the twins in her arms. They were safe. She had brought them back. Adewale rushed to her side, tears of relief streaming down his face. You did it, Aisha. You brought them back. But Aisha felt a strange heaviness in her chest. She looked down and saw that her hands were shaking. She could feel the spirit's presence, lingering and watching. Baba Agba appeared at the door, his face grave. You have crossed the line, Aisha, he said softly. The spirit will not give up easily. You have defied it, and now it will seek revenge. Aisha nodded, her heart heavy. What do we do now, Baba? Baba Agba sighed. There is a price for everything, Aisha. You have saved your sons, but the spirit will not rest until it has claimed what it believes is rightfully its own. You must be prepared for its return, and when it comes, you must be ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. Aisha felt a chill run down her spine. She knew what Baba Agba meant. She had saved her sons, but the battle was far from over. The spirit will return, and when it did, she would have to be ready to face it once more. As she looked at her sons, their faces pale but alive, She knew she would do anything to protect them, even if it meant sacrificing herself. The spirit would not take them, not while she still had breath in her body. One night, as they were preparing for bed, Aisha heard a faint whisper in the wind. She turned to see a shadow moving across the wall, its shape shifting and changing. She felt a chill run down her spine. Adewale, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's here. Adewale grabbed the twins and pulled them close. Stay behind me, he said, his voice firm. The shadow moved closer, its presence growing stronger. Aisha could feel the darkness closing in, could hear the spirits whisper in her ear. You cannot escape from me, it hissed. They belong to me. Aisha felt a surge of anger. No, she shouted. You will not take them. The spirit laughed with a deep, chilling sound. We shall see, it said, its voice filled with malice. Aisha knew she had to act fast. She grabbed the Bible she saw lying on the table, holding it up to the spirit. I banish you, she shouted, her voice strong. You have no power here. The spirit snarled and lunged at her, but she stood her grounds. She could feel its anger, its hatred, but she refused to back down. Suddenly, the Bible began to glow, a bright light filling the room. The spirit recalled, its form flickering and fading. Aisha could feel its power waning. She could see the shadows retreating and the light getting brighter. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the shadows slowly lifted from their home. The house that was once cold and empty began to fill with warmth and laughter once again. Adewale and Aisha and the twins, Ayomide and Ayodele, slowly began to heal, finding solace in each other. The twins grew up knowing they were blessed, not because they were spared from the spirit trap, but because they had a mother who loves them enough to face the darkness, and a father who had been strong enough to stand by them no matter the cost. And above all, they had God who had saved them ultimately. And so they lived on, not in fear, but in hope. The Bible, the Word of God, made the difference and brought redemption to the Adewales.